It's early morning in Hauna Village on the Sepik River in Papua New Guinea, and the village begins to come to life. The people are getting into their canoes and heading out onto the river and into the jungle to find food for the day. You know, this is the day the Sepik Iwan people have been looking forward to. It's a festival day, a day of celebration and sing-sing. It's great to watch these colorful people reenact some of their traditions. When my partner and I first came to Papua New Guinea in 1969 as Wycliffe Bible translators, our mission was to select one of the 700 language groups in that country and live among them and learn their language, develop an alphabet, and then teach them to read and write their own language, and then translate the entire New Testament, encourage a body of believers, and our work would be complete. Now, the mission of Wycliffe is to bring the gospel of Jesus Christ to everyone in their own language. There are over 5,000 languages in the world, and one half have never heard the gospel of Jesus Christ in their own language. We selected the Sepik Iwan people who live 500 miles up the Sepik River, which is the largest river in Papua New Guinea. The average rainfall is 200 to 300 inches per year. Since the area floods about 6 months out of the year, the Hauna people depend on fishing and hunting for their livelihood. When the fish are running and coming down in schools, it becomes a very exciting time in the village, and everyone is out spearing fish. And this is a real time of celebration and joy because, you know, they're going to have plenty of food for several days, something to really sing about. The Hauna people spend many hours in their canoes. They're river people, so one of the major jobs in the village is making canoes. and everyone, large and small, has a canoe. About 400 canoes are made every year, all sizes. This is men's work, and they really enjoy this work. They love going out to the jungle, and they go out in groups of 20 to 30 men at a time. And they have to go deep into the jungle to find these big trees. Now, the young fellas make a jungle highway in order to pull these long canoes to the river. And sometimes that's 4 or 5 miles. They float the canoes into the village, and then the older men, who are the skilled carvers, shape up these canoes and carve the design, sometimes carving birds' heads or crocodile heads on the front of the canoe. They are very, very skilled at this. And after they have the canoe carved out just the way they want it, then they'll burn the canoes, and the people say they cook the canoes. This is to preserve the canoes. They rub the black soot into the wood, and it will last a lot longer that way. It's tremendous to watch the people work together as a team. You will very seldom find just one man working all by himself. That's not the way the culture works. Here these men are lifting an ironwood tree, and we have a lot of ironwood in the jungle. They use this tree for building their houses. These trees are so heavy they won't float, and sometimes it will take 90 men to lift just one of these logs, and it's great to watch them work together as they start a new house. The women take their cooking pots in their canoes as they go out fishing. Their main staple in this village is sago. It comes from the sago palm tree, and they'll pound the pulp of this tree, and then they'll take it and squeeze the juice or the starch out of the pulp. And they'll boil water and pour it over the starch, and then it turns to paste. They'll take a portion of this sago paste and they'll put it on a green leaf. Now the leaf serves as their plate. And this is their food for the day. And every day they'll eat sago paste along with a smoked fish. And when we were translating, well, we don't translate that Jesus is the bread of life, but we say Jesus is the sago paste of life. And that is really exciting to the people. They very seldom eat sago paste alone. They'll eat it with a smoked fish, or like this man is doing, Nungrungi, he's eating it with a coconut, and he's saying, "Oh, Mama Marilyn, my throat is so happy." Now, the throat is the center of emotions in this culture, not the heart. And so Nungrungi's throat is very happy, and he says, this is what makes our bodies strong. The people use the river for drinking water, and this causes a great deal of our sickness in the village. So the medicine men are always busy. You know, we have about 54 houses in the village, and every house has a medicine man. They're busy constantly trying to heal the sick. It seems there's always someone sick, and they consider the spirits in the jungle as the main source of the sickness. Now, this medicine man is trying to determine what spirit has caused this boy's sickness. We receive training in linguistics, and we go to language groups where languages have never been written. We reduce the language to writing. Then we give them an alphabet. And the way we begin is just by living with the people. We go through the village every day, and we start by pointing to objects, gathering words. We start with the nouns, and it was at this time I discovered the word for paper. You know, they had never seen paper before, and it's yoku, which means banana leaf. And the word for pencil, they said, is naman, which means thorn. And for writing is wuni, which means carving. And they got so excited to see their language carved on the banana leaf. And they would ask me questions like, Kora dimu mani? Dimu yoku wuni kora? what is it that you're carving on that banana leaf? And I said, "Kuriaigen to yokuguni." I'm carving your talk. And they said, "My talk? You mean the words that are coming out of my mouth you're carving on the banana leaf?" They got so excited, and the people were just beautiful to work with. This woman is seeing her language written on the banana leaf for the very first time. The people really didn't understand what was involved in learning a language. They thought that if I would eat more of their food, that I could speak the language automatically. And so they were encouraging me to eat their fish and to eat their sago paste and their crocodile meat, which I did. And it was at this time that I became aware that some of the people really were interested in reading their own language. But for most of them, they saw very little value in reading and writing. They knew how to fish, how to build their houses, how to build their canoes, so why did they have to know how to read and write? So I had a problem in motivating them and getting them excited about wanting to read and write their own language. So while I was at Ukarumpa, which is our linguistics center, I decided to ask the JARS pilot to do me a favor. I typed up one of their cultural stories in their own language, and I ran 500 copies of this letter, and I gave it to the pilot. And I said, "Could you fly over the village and throw these letters out on the village?" And so the pilot was very excited about doing this, and the plane flew low over the village and threw all these banana leaves out on the village. And everyone was in their canoes running after these banana leaves, and they looked at it, and they saw that there was carving on the banana leaf. But not one person in the entire village could read it. The chief of the village became so disturbed and so concerned about this that he called a village meeting, and he decided that 20 young fellas had to come to my literacy class and learn to read and write their language. This was the breakthrough. It was really an exciting time, and this was the beginning of our literacy program. 20 students then became the teachers, carving their own language on a banana leaf. They wanted to learn everything about everything. My sister Shirley taught them how to add and subtract and multiply and to use the calculator. That was really something. Sewing. And today in Hauna Village, there are over 200 people who can read and write their own language. We developed 5 teams of translation helpers. We work in teams of 2, and we average about 10 verses a day, and it became a very intense but exciting work, carving God's talk on the banana leaf. We translated the entire New Testament in a rough first draft, a handwritten copy of the entire New Testament. And then the fellows themselves typed it up. And then they started to use the scriptures to meet the needs of the village. You know, when someone was sick, they would take a verse and read it to the people, meeting the needs of the people through the scriptures. That became very meaningful in their everyday life. The translation helpers, however, were very concerned that the older people were not involved in the work. They wanted to have the leaders to help us, the big men. And so I asked them if they would help us. And I said, "You're the leaders of the village. You're the big men. You're the ones that really understand the language, and we need your help if we're going to get this job done." And so we asked several men from each of the clans in the village. And we had 24 volunteers and some very powerful medicine men. This was really neat. Every day from 6:30 to 7:30, these 24 older men would come and they would listen to what we had translated for that day, giving suggestions and helping us to make the translation a little bit more meaningful. These older men later referred to themselves as the judges. Our word for doctor is ingam huisugi, which means the man who spits, the spitter. We have blind people in our village, and never has a medicine man been able to heal a blind person. Here, Danny and Tom are reading one of the verses that we had translated for that day in John chapter 9, verse 6, where it talks about Jesus healing the blind man. And they were reading, and Jesus spat on the ground and made mud and put it on the blind man's eyes, and the blind man received his sight. And these men said, "He did what?" And Danny and Tom said, "Jesus spit on the ground." And they said, "Jesus spit? Why, Jesus must be the most powerful spitter in the whole world." And do you know that these older men, right then and there at that time, identified with Jesus? Why, he's just like we are, but he has much more power. You know, I'd like to believe that God put that particular story in his word just to reach and touch the hearts of the Sepik Iwam people. These men played an important role in helping us find key words in the translation. Now, one of the words we struggled with was the word for forgiveness. One Christmas day, we were having the dedication of a new house, and people were coming in their canoes from every part of the village. Everyone was coming, and they were circling the house, and they had joined hands. And as Joel was praying the prayer of dedication, he said, "Oh, Adikomwi, Kramir Kuan Maraka Maraka Noe, oh, Papa God, our throats are happy. Thank you for this house." In the middle of that prayer, the people put their arms around one another's shoulders. I had never seen this kind of affection shown before. And when it was over, I went to Joel and I said, "Joel, what did it mean when the people put their arms around one another's shoulders?" And Joel was so moved, he had tears in his eyes, and he said, Marilyn, do you know what that means when someone puts their arm around someone's shoulder? It means that they're forgetting all the wrongs that they have ever committed towards one another, and they never remember them anymore. And I said, Joel, that's our word for forgiveness. Jesus has come that he might put his arms around our shoulders and never remember anymore the sins that we've committed. We found our word for forgiveness. The joy and the excitement was so high as the scriptures became so meaningful in their services. The leadership just started to develop, and people started to sing and to pray to Jesus in their own language. They have now written over 200 scripture songs. Danny here, who is one of the teachers, and he's also the chief's youngest son, a real leader, he loves to preach, and he's one of the most dramatic of the 8 preachers in our village. And he's saying, "I asked Jesus to come into my throat. I'm a different person now." And he's challenging the people to ask Jesus to come into their throats and to follow God's road. These colorful panels on their new church were painted by some of the judges. It took them 6 months to do those paintings. These people have become missionaries themselves. They're reaching out to other people from other villages and telling them about Jesus and baptizing them. One day I was walking through the village, and I came to Nokian's house. Now, Nokian is one of the oldest men in the village. He's considered to be the father of us all. And he started to ask me some very difficult questions. And he said to me, Marilyn, look at me. I'm an old man, and my skin is wrinkled. My eyes are poor, and my fingers have arthritis. I've been watching you as you walk through the village with your banana leaf, carving my talk. My father and many of my relatives died many years ago. They knew nothing about God, and for me, it's too late. I'm too old to learn to read my own talk. And he asked me, he said, did you know a long time ago when you were a little girl that there were people here in Papua New Guinea like myself? Did you know that? And I said, yes, I've read books. I knew about Papua New Guinea. And then he said to me, he said, well, Marilyn, why did it take you so long to come? I was so broken, and so inwardly I cried out, Lord, Lord, don't let others wait like this man has waited. One day after the service, a man from a distant village came up to me and he said, could you come to my village and put our talk on the banana leaf too, so that we can know about God also? Well, I had to tell him I couldn't come because my work here was not finished, and so I asked him where he lived. And he pointed over those mountains somewhere, and so I promised him that we would try and visit his village someday. Well, after several days had passed, we organized a party. The Christians of the village would not let me forget that we had made this promise. They were so burdened about the people and their needs, and so we started upriver. And we passed many villages, each one a different language, languages that have never been written. In New Guinea, there are 700 different languages, and 3,000 languages around the world, unwritten. People who have never heard about Jesus. Translating the Bible into all the languages of the world is not Wycliffe's problem. It's the responsibility of the church and every Christian. Wycliffe is one tool through which the Bible is being translated by ordinary people. After all day on the river, we found the village. There it was, tucked away in the mountains. The people were so excited that we had kept our promise. We were the first white people to ever come into the village. As I was talking with the people, I noticed a new building in the center of the village, different from the other buildings. And I asked the leader, I said, what is that building there? And he said, well, that's God's house. And I said, God's house? I said, do you have a mission here? And he said, oh, no, we've never had a mission. And I said, well, do you have a pastor? And he said, oh, no, we don't have anyone to tell us about God. But we know that someone is going to come by here and live in our village someday and tell us about God. And we want to be ready. And so we're waiting. And I thought to myself, waiting? And I couldn't hold back the tears, and I just cried, Lord, Lord, what can I do? What can I do? I see village after village filled with people who do not know you. Oh, Lord, please, touch the hearts of those at home. Touch their hearts. Lord, there are so many just waiting for someone to come by here.